Hey everybody, it's Dr. Cruz. How are you? So it's Thursday where I am, but we're gonna call it Talk About It Tuesday because I need some kind of theme to kind of remind me to make these videos on a particular day. So this week it's Thursday, but I'm gonna try to start doing them on Tuesdays to go along with my Talk About It Tuesdays theme. Okay, so today, I'm going to, as you all know or may not know, I have decided to start reading excerpts of my book to you all, and that idea came upon me supernaturally, as does almost every idea. Anything that I do in this healing out loud format comes to me supernaturally. It's not me creating this platform. This platform was shown to me in my spirit. I felt it, I heard it, I saw it, kind of thing. So the same applies to me wanting to read excerpts of my book to you all. And it was inspired by Domestic Awareness Abuse Month, which is this month, October. So the goal is that, if life is a continuum, right, I have surely gone from not the worst end, right? There's always someone's life who is worse than ours, okay? Please know that. Always remember that. Someone's life is worse than yours. So even when you feel like your life has no answers and it's so dark and you're in a place of confusion and self-loathing and exhaustion and depression, please know that there's someone's life who is worse off than yours. And if they can make it, so can you. And I hope to be that example on some level, because although my life wasn't the worst, right? When I start feeling really, really bad about my situation or that things are out of my control, I always think about the paraplegic. The paraplegic is always my go-to thought, because God bless the paraplegic. I don't care what is going on in my life. It's never that bad when I think of the struggles a paraplegic has. And I don't have pity for them, but I respect them. They deserve a lot of respect because their struggle in life is real. Ours, for the most part, when I say ours, I mean in general, no one specifically. We're uncomfortable. We are struggling with something that most times is not terminal, right? So anyway, I say all that to say that I'm going to start with the first chapter. Last week I made a video and I may delete it, but I started like on page 25. But I'm actually going to start at the beginning. And then that way, if you all want to go through the videos, there's a progressive state. And you can get my book From Foster Care to Fabulous, an Imperative Movement on Amazon.com. It's like 10 or 15 bucks. But I really encourage you to get it if you struggle with just about anything in life. Because I've been through just about anything and I kind of put it all in that book. Everything from physical, mental, spiritual, emotional abuse. Maybe not spiritual abuse, but I was spiritually lost for sure. Homelessness, lack of identity, domestic abuse, substance dependence, living a life that I didn't like, I didn't want to live. I wasn't aware. I had tremendous lack of awareness. That was one of the critical elements of my struggle. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I stayed miserable for up until my 30s. I was not happy. I was having moments of good times, but overall my life was very unhappy. And because of that, it affected my ability to be a mother. First of all, my environment didn't teach me how to be a mother. So when I had a child, I didn't know what I was doing. And it took me over a decade to figure it out. And so I talk about all of that in my book and more, and how to finally take control, or how I finally took control of my life. And so again, if we're on a continuum, I was way over here in the dark and the negative. And by the grace of God today, things are happening in my life that I could not have created on my own if my life depended on it. So I got to a point where my spiritual understanding of my experience in life opened doors for other things to come into my life and take over. Because surely I could not have done it by myself. Okay. And that's the secret, to know that we don't create these things, these changes in our life on our own, that we have a vibration, we have a frequency, we have an intention, we have an energy. And when we're connected to our source, our creator, when we step outside of the struggle and into learning how to relax through the things, the change that we want to create for ourselves, it comes to us. And obviously, we need to walk in the direction of the change that we want, because that's personal responsibility, right? But it talks about all of that. There's so much, right? I just tried to give you like a big nugget real quick, but there's so much to it. So, okay. So first of all, I need to fix my hair, because this is going to drive me crazy. Sorry, guys. Let's see. I want to keep it out of my eye while I'm reading. Okay. All right, here we go. Tears that fell in the dark. Oh God. Actually, strike that. I want to read the quote first. The quote says, "Keep me away from the wisdom which does not cry, the philosophy which does not laugh, and the greatness which does not bow before children." Khalil Gibran. That quote is very personal to me. I researched what quote I was going to have in each of my chapters. And this particular one, being that it's the first chapter, really, really spoke to me, because this chapter, Tears That Fell in the Dark, talks about the pain and the trauma and the negativity that I experienced as a child. And see, children are the most precious things on earth. And I think that society has taken that for granted, and they don't treat children as precious as they should, because they truly are the most delicate, fragile, malleable, precious creatures God has ever created. And when we look into the eyes of our children, I don't want to start crying already. When we look into the eyes of our children, we are looking at God's power, His magnificence, the miracle, and the incredible joining and collaborative efforts on a biological level that takes place to create a child. And then for that child to be birthed into life, we should not only honor our children and protect them, but we surely should see them in the sense that, they're just a miracle. Truly, children are a miracle. We're all walking miracles, but children, because they depend on us and they need us, our responsibility to them is tremendous. And I don't know that most people are conscientious enough to realize that, especially if you're living in poverty, struggling in an environment where you're struggling for your life, working 2 or 3 jobs. We neglect our children. We don't mean to. But there are too many things that need our attention. And we only have 24 hours in a day, and we only have a certain amount of energy. And I suspect that there is a great number of people that forget that their children should be their top priority. The people, and not just in poverty, but I say poverty because I used to live in poverty. And when you're poor, you are not working from your highest, best self because you're in a state of lack. You're hungry. That kind of poor. You're hungry. Maybe your living environment isn't adequate. There are many poor families that have a great family environment, but there are some who do not, and the children fall by the wayside. And with increased poverty comes increased irritation and increased child abuse. The child abuse numbers are higher in a poverty-stricken home. The probability that the father will not be in the home is higher. And so all of these things contribute to the neglect of the child. The education is not as good for a child that lives in poverty. And so, in general, everyone should remember that when they look into their child's eyes, they are looking at a real miracle. If you don't believe miracles are true in life, just look in your child's eyes, because there's a miracle that lives inside that soul. I'm thinking of my daughter right now. She's fantastic. She's magnificent. She is a creation of the Most High God. And you see it every time you look in her eyes, if you're aware enough to look for that. And you'll see it in your own children's eyes, okay? All right, so let me get back on track. Oh, dear God, do you see what I see? Do you see that man dragging that poor woman by her hair on the dirty cement sidewalk? What's going on? Is anyone going to help her? She's yelling for him to let go, one hand holding the base of her hair from being pulled off her scalp as her eyes scream of pain. She fights the shameful tears her pride won't reveal because she has been here one too many times before. Her face reflects her secrets. Her eyes speak. If only someone cared enough to listen. The excruciating agony and degradation that can't be hidden. I know that look. It comes from a deep place within her soul where where despair begs for compassion and forgiveness. What were her sins that led her to this moment of complete helplessness? Surely she must have gotten lost on a path not her own, and somehow arrived at this place called hell that is now her life. Isn't her value more than to be treated as worthless? Her spirit so drained, lacking answers to her own life's problems. She undoubtedly has never been introduced to the truth that she was born to be great. If only she knew God, like I now know God, things could have been different for her. This is the memory of my mother. As I look out my window today, I remember myself as a 7-year-old child, having been removed from my mother's care and somehow plummeting into a scary, abusive foster home. I had been sitting all alone in what felt like an abandoned kitchen one night, finishing up my dinner, when from around the corner came this strange woman who told me to take a bath and get ready for school the next day. Despite not having been in the kitchen in over 32 years, the image of that room never left my mind. It was cold and dreary, and I knew I didn't belong there. There was a back door leading to from the kitchen to the yard, And upon entering, the first thing visible was a plastic kitchen table. I sat there that particular night, facing the sink, which was beneath the window, overlooking the muddy yard where the farm animals were kept. There were doorways on either side of that table leading to other parts of the house. To my right was the living room. To my left was a hallway, which I walked down that night, leading me to a bathroom that would house the secrets of some of the earliest childhood abuse that I recall and the memories of my upcoming horror. Earliest recollection of abuse. Sitting naked in the bathtub that night, I played in the water as most children do, when suddenly I was frightened by someone coming in. I can't visualize her face today, but I recall it was my foster mother. She stood towering over me with a green fly swatter in her hand and a look on her face that paralyzed me. I was 7 years old. Fear immediately consumed my soul as she raised her arm and began to beat me. Pain ripped through my bare, wet skin as I slid across the bathtub. Screams from inside my head were all I heard as I helplessly howled in terror. I have no idea what she was saying in the moment. I just remember being unable to escape. Why was this happening? I had done nothing wrong. I had no idea what was going on. Why was I being punished when I was just doing what I had been told to do? Today, those sounds of terror still echo in my head from her beating me as I struggled to find safety in the tub. My face stinging, my arms burning, my back wrenching with pain, my head throbbing from her pulling my hair. With each scream that escaped my mouth in hopes of someone to save me, I wonder some 32 years later, what could I have been thinking in that moment as that little innocent child consumed by pain and fear. Slipping and sliding from one side of the tub to the other, I had tried to squirm away from this person in the midst of her rage. I had screamed and cried, but alone I remained. No one came to help me. I remember hitting my head on the side of the tub as I tried to move away from her. As she grabbed a hold of my hair, I screamed. I was scared for my life, and I called out for my mommy and daddy to come save me. She continued to beat me, pulling my hair and hitting me as hard as that I thought I was going to die. What could I have done so wrong from the time that I left the kitchen table to when I began to play in the bathtub? At some point, I remember her saying something about me hiding peas under my mashed potatoes, which she discovered while cleaning my plate. The rage she expressed over those vegetables that night is the first conscious memory I have of the crippling fear that would follow me for most of my life. Even today, 40 some years old, even today. Today, as I recollect my scattered memories of childhood abuse, I realize that this is but one of many memories that has haunted me and helped me to create a life that has rarely made sense to me. You see, yes, this would just be one of my petrifying experiences at the hands of my abusers. But as sad as the memories were for me, they were nothing compared to that of my brother. I will read the segment about my brother called Like Pigs to a Slaughter in the next video because I didn't print out enough pages for you to get the full understanding. But we had pigs in the backyard, and the way they treated him, that's why I titled it that. Like pigs to the slaughter. That's how they treated him. So, you know, what can I say? right? I think that says it all. My heart, my God, I'm 40 some years old. I'm over 45 years old. It doesn't leave you. It never leaves you. I don't care how old you are. It never leaves you. You work through it, you process it, you manage it. You forget some memories because that's naturally what happens. And it's important for us to remember that all of our memories are not accurate. The way our brain works through neurons, and neurons are brain cells. And one neuron speaks to another neuron through a circuitry of events. And as we age, some of those neurons leave that memory and go off to make new memories. And some neurons die, right? We're losing neurons all the time. And the way the mind works, it doesn't recall an exactness. It just doesn't. Our memories are not always real. They're not always true. They're not always exact. The pain, the trauma is still here, though. There's a really great book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about how trauma gets embedded in our physiology. You know, when I wrote my book, someone said to me, I can see that you embellished the events. And I was offended because I didn't embellish anything. I wrote that book the way I recall my life. And I know these things have happened to me. I also know that what is stronger than the memory is the physiological damage that I have been working to heal my whole life. Even today, I continue to work on healing myself. Fear has embedded itself very deep in my physiology. Fear of crossing bridges. I have panic attacks when I cross bridges. I have full-blown panic attacks. I have gotten to the point where I stop. If I see a bridge, I stop. I will not move forward. Someone else either has to drive or I back the hell out of there. I do. I back up. And, I get out of there as quickly as I can. There are times where I do push through. I have to talk myself through because sometimes I don't see the bridge in time and I'm like, shit, there's a bridge. My hands start getting so sweaty. My heart is pounding out of my chest. My mind is freaking out over this bridge. Yet I see tons of cars crossing it. Why am I affected in the way that I am when it comes to crossing bridges? I don't know. Something has happened in my history where I need to feel land on both sides of me. I remember in Hawaii, and the reason I'm going off topic, it sounds like I'm going off topic, but I'm not. I'm talking about fear and how it affects us physiologically. I was in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for 3 years, and my girlfriend and I were going to go on a catamaran. So the catamaran, I didn't know what a catamaran was. She was like, let's go on a catamaran. I'm like, okay, cool. So we get there, and it's a plexiglass. The one I was getting on was a plexiglass floor, and it had maybe 3 ropes on the sides. of this plexiglass catamaran. I don't even know how the thing is propelled. I don't know. I don't know if it had an engine. I don't know if they were rowing the damn thing. I just don't know because I freaked out. I could not get 1 foot on that catamaran before my physiology freaked out. I had a full-blown panic attack. I nearly fainted. Now, mind you, I had 1 foot on land and 1 foot was going on this boat, this catamaran, this plexiglass floor. Freaked me out. The power of fear that's embedded in you from trauma. And trauma is whatever the brain interprets as trauma. So trauma for you may not be trauma for me. I was able to process 99.9% of my history. I am, for all intents and purposes, healed. Mind, body, spirit, soul, mentally, physically, emotionally, from all the trauma I've ever experienced in my life, 99.9% healed by the grace of God. I've done a lot of work on myself, but it was by the grace of God that I was healed. But my physiology is still affected. When I read that, you saw I came to tears. Had I not been on camera, I probably would have cried, full blown out, because I feel sad. I feel sad that any of it happened. Stupid. Child abuse and neglect and poverty and foster care. Why do people have babies if they can't take care of them? It's what my heart and soul screams. Why have children if you can't feed them? If you can't take care of them? If you're going to beat them? Neglect them? What's the purpose? Are you that selfish? Are you that unaware? Are you that stupid? Are you that cruel to have children and then neglect and abuse them so that they end up in foster care? But if the answer was so simple, we could solve the problem. But the answer isn't that simple. It takes education. It takes people making videos like these to talk about it. Talk about it Tuesday, right? It's not Tuesday, it's Thursday. But it's devastating. The whole shindig is ridiculous. My parents, what were they thinking? Why couldn't they get their lives back right? Why couldn't they achieve more than being my mother, poor white trash? She ended up living in Oregon Hill. If you know anything about Oregon Hill in Virginia, it's the white ghetto. I lived across the street from a cemetery, for God's sake, in the poorest part of town. Vulnerable to the evils of the world. Children without the protection and the guidance of healthy-minded parents become victims to the evil of this world. And it is our responsibility as adults to help other adults understand their responsibility as parents, to protect their children who are helpless. They are God's miracle, but they are helpless. And the reason they have parents is that the parent is supposed to help them, teach them, protect them, keep them safe, guide them, be a good role model for them. Yet we have children and we are horrible role models. We don't even have ourselves under control. I'm speaking in general senses. Don't be offended. Or maybe be offended if it applies to you. But be offended and do something about it. Don't be offended to be offended and be angry. Be awakened. Because I'm going to tell you something. I missed out on a tremendous opportunity to be present with my daughter when I was an unaware mother. My parents missed out on a tremendous time period to be present with me, to mold me into a wonderful human being. They missed that opportunity. They neglected that opportunity. They failed me. And you might be failing your own children. So don't sit in pity, but seek spiritual guidance, because you must become awakened so that we don't continue to abandon our children to this abuse in foster care. You know, even if a child enters foster care and they're not physically abused the way I was and my brother was, you don't grow up right. You don't grow up with a sense. You know, there's a reason why we're born into family. Biologically, we get a sense of identity. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my, lions, but animals in the jungle, they stay in their tribe for a reason. There is identity, there is security, there is awareness, there is teaching that is being done in your own tribe. There is a sense of protection. There is a hierarchy of leadership and love and guidance. And when a cub or an animal gets lost out of their tribe, just like when a child gets lost out of their tribe and goes into foster care, it may physically be a safer environment, maybe, maybe not. But let's assume it is. It's a physically safer environment. But the damage that is done to a child who loses their identity and doesn't know who their tribe is, they have no sense of security. They're in some stranger's home. And if you know anything about foster care, you know they move and move and move and move usually. I know one kid moved over 100 times. Some of the kids, they commit suicide because they just can't take it anymore. I moved 9 times. It was horrible. Horrible. There are effects. There are effects that I still endure because I grew up in foster care. It never leaves us. And those who are stronger than those who are not end up figuring out how to manage it and process it and control it and things of that nature. But there are hundreds of thousands of people in this world who don't have the resources or the opportunities or the personal growth and development or the guidance or the wisdom or the mentorship, the help, the role models to guide them in the direction that they need to go in. And they get stuck in this survival-based lifestyle. And all they know is what they've been exposed to in their environment, because we are products of our environment. You know that, right? We are all products of our environment until we are not. But to become not, which actually that's not an accurate statement. We are always products of our environment. The thing that changes is our environment. So I am no longer that person affected by predominantly by the environment, me being homeless and in foster care and abused and all this kind of thing, because I changed my environment. But I didn't say, hey, I'm so smart, I'm going to change my environment. That's not how it happens. I just happenstanced on the military. And due to the traveling, I got to travel around the world, and I got exposed to other cultures in leadership in the military. I was blessed by the grace of God. He saved me. Every child doesn't get that opportunity. And I didn't awake until I was 37 years old. So I had been in the military for 17 God-forsaken years before I awoke. Can you imagine being lost for that long in your life because you didn't grow up in a healthy home with people that love you, that are invested in you, that nurture you, that guide you, that care for you, that protect you, that teach you, that feed you life? There is a reason why some people do well in life and others don't. Sometimes you can say it was a stupid choice they made, but sometimes they make these choices that end them up in prison or suicide because they don't have any other options. They don't know. They're not aware. They lack resources. You have no idea. If you don't have any idea, you don't know. It's not as simple as saying, well, they should just get it together. Foster care, abuse, general abuse, domestic abuse, childhood abuse, sexual abuse. It affects the physiology. We can create new memories easily, actually, by doing new things and being exposed to new people and all that kind of thing. But to change the way our neurons connect to each other and send messages to our skeletal and muscular elements of our body. The anxiety that I experienced when I crossed that bridge, that's automatic from my neurological system. My central nervous system is programmed. And to unprogram that and reprogram it a different way, it's very, very difficult. It's doable, but it takes a long time. And if we can avoid children having to have this struggle in their future, why not? It requires us to be better people, better parents, better human beings, more caring, more compassionate, more self-love. We must love ourselves. We must know our Creator. I didn't love myself until I understood that my Creator loved me so much that He gave His only begotten Son to die on the cross for my sins, for your sins, for every sin that's ever occurred, and for every sin that will ever occur in the future. And that He, through the Word of God, tells me who I am. You know who you are because your family has brought you up to teach you who you are. And other elements in life. But when you're abused, foster care or no foster care is my story, but there are many abused people in this world that have nothing to do with foster care. When you're abused, or when you don't have parents, it's a different story. So, I say all of this to say, walk with me on this journey that I've experienced in my life. And let's talk about it. Talk about it Tuesdays. Y'all have no idea. I'm a goofy fool. But sometimes it's in my own head. Oh my Lord. There's a lot of self-healing that comes from writing your own book. I encourage you, consider writing your own book. because you get to reveal things about yourself that sometimes are just here or here, but when they're on paper, it's a whole different experience. And you can use it to help change people's lives like I'm doing. You change your own, and then you change the world. Okay? So I'm Dr. Cruz. I love you guys. Until next time. Talk about it Tuesdays, okay? I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.